Now that title, A French Titanic, I've used it for a very specific reason, and that is down to the funnels. This will upset some ocean liner fanboys, but the thing is, no matter whether you like it or not, the vision of a four-stack liner is synonymous with the White Star Line's Titanic, even though there were multiple ships with four stacks. As different countries and companies raced to one-up each other on transatlantic routes, they built bigger, stronger, and faster ships. You only have a look at Lusitania, Mauretania, and the Titanic. It's going on size here, the bigger the better. However, the SS France took a step back. She wasn't the biggest or the fastest, but she was one of the most remarkable ocean liners of the early 20th century, an embodiment of French engineering at its very best, while the Carnot that we talked about last week was French engineering arguably at its very worst. She was luxurious, and she was a form of national pride at sea, and in the English-speaking world, many people will have never heard of her. Welcome back to 5 Minute History, the weekly series where patrons choose the topic. This week, as part of a month dedicated to French history, we are examining the ocean liner SS France. Built for the Compagnie Générale Transatlantique, or CGT, because I'm not saying it over and over again because I can't speak French, also commonly known simply as French Line, SS France represented the pinnacle of pre-World War I liner design and luxury. At nearly 217 metres long and equipped with 4 funnels, she was smaller than the Titanic and the Lusitania, but larger than the German Kaiser Wilhelm de Grosse. She wasn't the fastest either, able to chug along at a hair over 23 knots. She outpaced the White Star liners but fell short of the Cunard ships. France kind of just existed in the middle, and that's precisely what she was designed to do. At the turn of the 20th century, the North Atlantic passenger trade was dominated by the British and German liners. Companies such as Cunard, White Star, and the Norddeutsche Lloyd raced each other for supremacy, with increasingly fast and luxurious ships. This can all be seen to be occurring against the backdrop of an equally vicious naval arms race. British liners such as the Mauretania and Lusitania set records for speed, while German four-funnel liners such as the Kaiser Wilhelm de Grosse cemented the association of multiple funnels with prestige, power, and safety. The French line, despite its distinguished heritage, lacked an ocean liner that could rival these heavyweights in speed or scale, and when it came to the great game of power politics in the early 1900s, this was simply not on. To change that perception, CGT's leadership under President Jules Charles Roux embarked on a project of designing and building a flagship that would project French influence and artistry across the Atlantic. After all, many of the passengers travelling on the aforementioned British and German ships were Americans who would also visit France, so why not cut out the middleman? Ordered in 1908, the ship was initially to be named Picardie, but prior to her launch, her name was changed to France to better reflect the national stature that CGT hoped to attain with the ship. The construction of France began in February 1909 at the Chantiers de l'Atlantique shipyard in Saint-Nazaire. At approximately 23,666 gross registered tons, she was more than twice the size of most of CGT's earlier steamers, and at launch, the largest ship ever built in France. Her propulsion system comprised of 4 Parsons steam turbines, driving quadruple screws producing 45,000 shaft horsepower and driving the ship at 23.5 knots. France was also the first and only French liner to feature 4 funnels, a design trait widely associated with the fastest and most prestigious liners, even if it was wholly unnecessary in many cases. It was all about the aura. For example, the 4th funnel on the Olympic class didn't really do anything. It was just there for looks. A major area of innovation when it came to the France, though, was its electrical generation. See, France was among the most electrified ships afloat, with not only powered lighting throughout the vessel, but also electricity for cooking, ovens, winches, elevators, and other systems. Early on, she faced technical setbacks with this immense electrical plant, including spectacular failures during speed trials, but modifications resolved these issues, and the system became highly reliable, particularly when you consider it was an earlier 20th century vessel, and then we get to the luxuriousness of the interior. First-class accommodations on France were lavish beyond what would be practical for many wealthy travellers. Salons and private apartments were decorated in the style of the Ancien Regime, with spacious dining rooms, temperature-controlled wine cellars, and grand staircases modelled after Parisian edifices such as the Hôtel de Toulouse. In many ways, she could be described as Versailles on sea. Her interiors resemble those of a luxury palace rather than a transport vessel. As one contemporary account noted, France brought a whole new level of elegance to ocean liner travel. These spaces were designed to cater to the expectations of only the most affluent transatlantic travellers. A gymnasium, an elevator, a hair salon, and cafe terraces were among the amenities that made long months at sea more agreeable. even though it was only really 4 or 5 days to cross the Atlantic. Even second class on France was considered comfortable and well appointed to the standards of the day. It was in every sense of the word extremely hoity-toity and probably out of the price range of most of the people listening to this video. The ship would finally be launched on the 20th of September 1910, and following her final outfitting and trials, including a non-insignificant amount of work done fixing the electrics, France commenced a maiden voyage on the 20th of April 1912 from her home port of Le Havre, bound for New York, just a week after the sinking of the RMS Titanic. Unlike Titanic though, France was equipped from the start with lifeboats capable of accommodating all passengers and crew. This was a feature that significantly enhanced public confidence in her safety, and it may have helped CGT weather the negative press fallout following the Titanic's loss that marred the entire transatlantic shipping industry. In terms of performance, France proved herself a formidable competitor. With regular service speeds of 23.5 knots, she was faster than nearly all of the older liners afloat except for the Cunard's Mauretania and Lusitania, and later Aquitania, both of which had established reputations for speed records and held the record. The combination of speed, luxury, and distinctive French cuisine made France popular among transatlantic travellers, and helped elevate CGT's reputation in a competitive market, especially on the back of the Titanic disaster. But despite these early successes, France was not without flaws. Passengers and crew reported disturbing vibrations transmitted through the hull and pronounced tendencies to roll, even in relatively calm seas. These issues were significant enough to warrant her temporary withdrawal from service after only a couple of voyages for modifications. To redress these problems, she was sent to the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Northern Ireland for these upgrades. There, longer and wider bilge keels were added to reduce rolling behaviour, and new propellers were installed to mitigate vibration. After these modifications, her performance was greatly improved, and the issues seemingly vanished. As with so many other liners, the outbreak of war in 1914 saw the ship requisitioned by the French Navy, and commissioned as an armed merchant cruiser under the name France 4. However, the reality of wartime logistics quickly revealed that, like other liners built with this auxiliary role in mind, she consumed fuel at an impractically high rate and was too large and inefficient in her role. Similar things happened with the Lusitania. As a result, she was soon reconfigured as a troop transport, and began ferrying soldiers and materials. In one notable incident on the 18th of June 1916, France collided with the British destroyer HMS Eden in the English Channel, sinking the destroyer with a significant loss of life. Later in 1916, France was painted white and converted to a hospital ship to serve in the Dardanelles campaign, alongside White Star Line's Britannic and Cunard's Aquitania. Although they never really met side by side, it must have been quite the sight to see these three enormous four-funnelled liners together in this duty. During this period, she was modified to accommodate up to 2,500 wounded soldiers, and played a vital role in evacuations and patient transfer. After the sinking of the Britannic later that year, the need for hospital ships grew even more urgent, forcing the France into continued service until 1917, when she was finally transferred back to the Atlantic to carry the American Expeditionary Forces to Europe. Without the need for medical equipment, her capacity was surged to carry 5,000 men on a single trip, and after 4 years of hard charging to wherever her government needed her, the France's military service came to an end in 1918 due to an engine room explosion that killed 9 crewmen and necessitated extensive repairs before she could return to the civilian duties. In March 1919, after the war's end, France returned to the CGT and she was reinstated as the France. Not the France 4, the France. Initially, she assisted in repatriating American troops before being laid up for refurbishment by early 1920, and by early 1920 she had resumed commercial service across the Atlantic. Throughout the early 1920s, the France remained popular despite the competition from newer and larger liners. In 1921, she relinquished the flagship status of the fleet to the Paris, but affluent travellers continued to favour the older ship. By 1924, reflecting changes in market demand and her strong reputation, CGT converted the ship to an all first-class configuration, with only 150 third-class berths remaining, and during this refit her boilers were converted to burn fuel oil rather than coal, which reduced the engine room crew and improved efficiency overall. France continued the seasonal transatlantic crossings with winter cruising through the latter half of the decade. With the introduction of the new Ile-de-France in 1927 though, she was increasingly assigned to cruising duties rather than regular liner trips. The onset of the Depression though really brought her life to an end. In the early 1930s it proved completely devastating for transatlantic passenger travel. The wealthy clientele that had sustained the France's all first-class profitability were hit hard by the economic collapse, and passenger numbers declined sharply. France spent increasing amounts of time idle until her withdrawal in 1932. The ship was laid up at Le Havre, where she languished unattended until January 1933, when a fire broke out, causing minor damage aboard but underscoring her declining condition. By this time, newer and more efficient liners like the Normandy were nearing completion, and CGT decided it was time to retire the former flagship. On the 15th of April, 1935, after 21 years of service both at war and at peace, France departed Le Havre for the final time under her own power. The ship was sailed to Dunkirk, and over the next few years she was broken up for scrap, most likely her metal going towards the rapidly rearming French military for the war to come. The France would never reach the same level of fame as the British liners, particularly because she didn't sink, but also due to the fact she's from a country that speaks a language other than English. But there are some things that are special that you can point out. For one, she was the only French four-funnel liner, and her electrical system was revolutionary. She also paved the way for greater ships, leading to vessels such as the Normandy, and for that, I think she's worth the that's nearly 11 minutes that you've just spent watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe, thank you patrons, and I will catch you all next time.